Hi, I'm Jeff Hajek, the owner and founder of Velaction. This video is part of my lean training system. It was originally released as a DVD a long time ago, but times have changed and the look of some of these LTS videos is now a bit dated. The content is still spot on though, so rather than just discontinue the line, I am posting the majority of each of the 36 videos here, with the remainder available at Velaction Videos. That's our video service where you can download a wealth of supporting content and watch subscriber-only videos. I recommend subscribing and hitting the notification button if you want to make sure you don't miss any new content. I would also really appreciate if you would hit the like button if this video is helpful and you want to see more content similar to it. The like button helps us get found on YouTube, but it also lets us figure out where you want us to put our future effort. Now enjoy the free version of this video. Welcome to Velaction Continuous Improvement's overview presentation on Kaizen planning and chartering. I am Jeff Hajek, the owner and founder of Velaction. I like to start each presentation by going over the objectives of what I hope you learn from it. The first goal is to reinforce the importance of thorough project planning. While it is not some sort of earth-shattering revelation that a Kaizen event would need to be properly planned, it is certainly worthy of a mention here. The second goal is to teach you about a few of the forms that will make your Kaizen planning and chartering easier and more effective. Namely, this includes the Kaizen checklist and the Kaizen charter. If this were to happen to you, I'm pretty sure it's no stretch to say that you would probably hope that you had planned properly in case of this incident. You'd hope that you have all the proper tools in your car. You'd hope that the spare tire was in good shape and inflated. You'd hope that the lug nuts would not be seized in place and impossible to remove. You'd hope that you had warm or wet weather gear available if needed. You'd hope that you actually knew how to change a tire. Or you'd at least hope that you had the phone number for AAA. Proper planning for Kaizen helps to avoid incidents like this, but it also helps you react quickly and effectively when you do have such a problem. Unfortunately, because it is hard work to plan properly, there is often an urge to cut corners. Resist the urge, and make sure you are thoroughly prepared before you bring a Kaizen team together. There are three main things you'll plan for in a Kaizen event. The first is that you will scope out the project. This entails setting goals, deciding what is off limits and on limits, and establishing the business need for the project. You also arrange for resources and recruit a team. The size of the team and the resources you will need are dependent upon the scope, hence the overlap. Limitations on resources may require that you adjust your scope. Planning is an iterative process. You'll also need to make sure that you have all of your logistical needs locked in. The Kaizen checklist includes a great deal of minutia. These items taken individually may seem rather unimportant, but when you are in the middle of an event and you have a team trying to do things quickly, all these little seemingly unimportant things can add up and make life difficult. Again, this diagram shows overlap because your scope and team and resources and logistics all impact each other. As I mentioned in the goals and objectives, there are a few planning tools that I want you to walk away from this presentation being able to use. The ones I'm about to show you come from Velaction's line of forms and tools. Don't sweat what it says on these at this point. You may end up using something that you find elsewhere, or you may use our forms with some significant modification. Just make sure you know what the forms are and what they do. The first form is the Kaizen checklist. If you watched the Kaizen process overview video, you'll recall that we recommend starting the planning process 4 weeks out. This tool helps you make sure that you get everything done at the right time. It is very easy to inadvertently skip steps. Plus, some things, especially ordering obscure items with long lead times or getting a busy person's schedule cleared for the team, can take an extended time to plan. The other document you'll be working on early in your planning process is the charter. This is basically an at-a-glance view of your Kaizen event. This will be extremely important when pitching the project to the champion and executive sponsor, as well as when recruiting a team and arranging for resources. If the charter looks like you're just pencil whipping it, people will not have a lot of confidence in your ability to get things done properly. I hope you are getting something valuable out of this video. If you want to get more out of this program, we recommend watching it on Velaction Videos. You'll be able to watch the entire video, mostly ad-free, and view subscriber-only programs. You'll also have access to a load of continuous improvement downloads. Again, if you remember from our Kaizen process overview video, there are quite a few people involved in a Kaizen event. We're going to take a moment to talk about their roles in the planning process. The executive sponsor has a big say in what Kaizens are actually going to be done. This is because they are extremely tuned in to strategic goals. Whenever somebody tells them that they are falling behind on their targets, one of the first questions the senior leaders will probably ask is whether a Kaizen event can help them get back on track. But that kind of emphasis on targets does not operate in a vacuum. A lot of work in support of Kaizen events that an executive sponsor does is ongoing. They're constantly working to build a lean culture. Without the proper infrastructure in place, it can be a big challenge to make gains and an even bigger challenge to make them stick. The champion selects the team leader, but often this is actually done by default. The leader of the work area being improved is generally the person who leads the event. In other cases, the team leader actually comes to the champion asking for a Kaizen event instead of the other way around. Regardless of how the team leader is initially identified, the final decision to formally assign a particular person to the position usually rests with the champion. In addition, the champion plays a substantial role in identifying the business case for the event. Kaizen weeks are pretty expensive in terms of time and opportunity costs. Whatever the team members would otherwise be doing is not getting done. The champion makes sure that the Kaizen event is worth it. The team leader is the workhorse of Kaizen planning. He or she is responsible for completing the planning checklist to make sure the Kaizen event goes off without a hitch. In most cases, the team leader's regular job is in charge of the work area that is being improved. On occasion, it may also be a specialist who supports the work area, perhaps a manufacturing engineer. It is important that the team leader has a lot of familiarity with the work area. The team leader should also have strong leadership skills and have a driven personality. They will have to figure out ways to overcome obstacles during the planning cycle, so people with less drive tend to struggle. The last person who is heavily involved in the planning of a Kaizen is the facilitator. This person acts as a coach and mentor to the entire leadership team. They tend to have a lot of experience with projects, so can help set the scope and make sure the project aligns with the goals of the organization. In addition, they can answer questions about the planning steps and even act to keep the team leader on track. While the team leader is responsible for the success of the project, the facilitator is responsible for the success of the team leader. Kaizen event ideas come from a variety of sources. The first group is senior leadership. Because they are closely tuned into the corporate strategy, they tend to be very proactive about making sure that goals stay on track. When they get an inkling that a miss is pending, and of course when they actually see a number fall short on the monthly goal bowler, they take action. That action is often in the form of a Kaizen event. They also likely have value stream maps that they are working off of. These have a variety of Kaizen bursts that are the linkage between the current state and the future state. Presumably, completing all of that Kaizen activity will close the gap, and closing the gap will help that operation contribute to hitting corporate goals. Middle management also plays a big role in coming up with Kaizen event ideas. They track operational metrics, so they have a front row seat to any problems as they occur. Minor problems should be handled with daily Kaizen activity, but sometimes the metrics start to slip, and on-the-spot fixes will not cut it. In those cases, when a KPI bowler miss is likely or has already happened, middle management creates a countermeasure. The countermeasure may use a Kaizen event as one of the means of getting back on track. Middle management also has eyes, and good middle managers make sure that those eyes are frequently brought to the work area, if they don't already reside there. When they see a problem that needs fixing, the appropriate tool is sometimes a Kaizen event. Frontline teams are in a great position to come up with Kaizen event ideas. Obviously, having process knowledge is a great way to understand the shortcomings of that process. And nobody knows processes better than the people doing them every day. They also have a good idea of what makes them frustrated. Generally, the things that upset employees are also the things that sap profitability. When employees complain, smart leaders look for the broken process. Frontline leaders also find Kaizen event gold in their dealings with customers. Kaizen events that originate from customer complaints or suggestions tend to have a high return on investment. Professional specialists also generate good ideas for Kaizen events. While they probably have a decent understanding of the process, the bigger reason that their ideas are so valuable is that they tend to be data-driven. Whether they come from VOC data that a marketing manager uncovers or warranty information that a manufacturing engineer dives into, data-driven ideas also tend to have a high payoff. As part of the Lean training system this video comes from, we offer a variety of Lean Lego training packages. These include our Lean Lego flow simulation, mistake proofing or poka-yoke Lean Lego exercise, and our visual controls and 5S Lean Lego exercise. We've also got an office flow simulation for those not implementing continuous improvement on the shop floor. Click the links in the description below or click on cards that pop up on this video to learn more. We'll also add links at the end. Let's take a quick look at the general timeline of planning a Kaizen event. Keep in mind that this timeline is not written into stone, but it is a good general frame that covers a 4-week planning process. Why 4 weeks? Start too early and you open up the opportunity for things to change. You also complicate things as more Kaizen events are in the active planning phase. By that, I just mean that there are more balls in the air if you have a longer planning window, and that means more things that can fall through the cracks. Conversely, if you start too late, it is easier to miss things and harder to arrange things that have long lead times. I'm not saying don't ever do a last-minute Kaizen. Sometimes it is necessary. I'm just saying make that the exception rather than the rule. Now, on to the planning weeks. One of the first activities of your planning is to actually choose the event. While this seems obvious, it is more of an iterative process than you might imagine. Once the project gets on the radar, many different people may make suggestions on how to tweak it. Again, all things being equal, the priority for Kaizen events should be those that have the biggest impact on your strategy or creating the future state operation that you have laid out in your value stream maps. Once there is agreement and the project is given a green light, create the charter and begin work on the checklist. When you get to 3 weeks out, the theme is communication. It is important to let people know what is going to happen as early as possible. This is especially important to the team members who were selected for the project. Many of them will need to clear their calendars. In addition, depending upon the nature of the project, there may be a need to collect data. The team will collect the data during the process walk, but sometimes the information they can collect, especially when there's a long cycle time, may not be enough. As you get to 2 weeks out, you will continue to arrange logistics. All of your ordering should have been completed by now. At this point, you are printing out any classroom handouts, gathering up training materials, and completing any other minor administrative tasks that don't require much advance notice. The team leader and facilitator should also do a walkthrough of the process that will be worked on. There is a fine line to walk here. You want to have an understanding of the process and be able to predict any problems, but you don't want to have any preconceived notions that are not supported by data. You also don't want to get yourself hooked onto possible solutions. This can be a challenge, especially for the team leader. It is extremely likely that he or she has an opinion about how things should be done. That opinion may be correct, but it is far too early in the process to come up with solutions. The real goal is to be ready to start a Kaizen event on Monday of the week before it is scheduled. I'm just talking about preparation here. I understand that this would not work from a personnel scheduling perspective. What I just mean is that if you shoot for having all of your prep work done early, you won't run into any surprises. What that means is that the final week before the Kaizen event is mostly for crossing T's and dotting I's. You can go over the feedback that you've been gathering from frontline employees and other stakeholders. You can look over the data you've been collecting and see if there's anything concerning. You can also make sure all of your checklist has been completed. You also have the option to do a bit of training during this week. I generally prefer to have the entire team trained together. But once you've been doing continuous improvement for a while, there's little value in having a person sent through a third or fourth round of training for a Kaizen. You'll get to the point where there are only one or two people on a team that haven't previously participated in a Kaizen event and received the standard training. If this is the case, you can train those people early and free up an extra day to make improvements during your project. As a helpful tip, plan ahead and see if there are any other upcoming events that have a similar training need. Many of the exercises and discussions need a handful of people to make them more effective. Pool your trainees. One of the forms we talked about was the charter. Let's dive into that right now. When thinking about how to define a problem, there are two basic conditions. There is the should be condition, the state you would like to be in. And then there is reality. When those two things are the same, you are probably happy. But when they are not equal, you have a problem. Sounds simple, right? Well, there are several things that complicate it. The first is that you may not know what the current state actually is. More often than you would believe, people overestimate their performance. Many times, people do not even realize that there is a mismatch. You may also not have any clarity on how things should be. People often operate in a vacuum of goals. And I'm not just talking about numerical goals here. It is certainly my preference that you have those, but I am also talking about the lack of a future vision of where the organization is going. And even if you have a defined should-be condition, you may not agree with it. It is very hard to get a team behind a mission if they're not on board with its goals. But if you do agree with the stated should-be condition, there's also the risk that your organization is wrong. Just because something is defined does not mean it is correct. So how do you go about figuring out how things should be? Well, the thing that starts it all is the voice of the customer. That is the collection of all the different ways that customers let you know what their needs are. It's not rocket science to figure out that any improvements you make should improve profitability while getting you closer to meeting customer needs. Your strategy should be based on your VOC. Basically, this is just a high-level approach your company chooses to take to meet the needs of customers that you choose to serve. Some companies compete on price. Some compete on service. Some compete on quality. The strategy should clarify this for the organization. Value stream maps are the operational translation of your strategy. They are the visual images of how your work areas look now and in the future. They include numerical targets as well as a general layout of the flow. Your metrics track how well you're doing at moving to the future state. Pay special attention to your critical to quality metrics, as these tend to have the biggest impact on customer satisfaction. If you've done your due diligence and have worked through these layers correctly, your metrics provide you with a good understanding of the should-be state. So we know a problem is when there's a gap between should-be and reality. It follows that a problem statement is a clear description of that gap. When making a problem statement, there are several things that you should include. You don't always find this, but I like to see a due date in the problem statement. My logic is that it gives you a sense of how pressing the problem is. Specific numbers are also important. Not only do they provide clarity, they also inspire confidence in the problem statement. Numbers show that you have done your homework and have a good understanding of what you're talking about. You want to describe the impact of the problem. This basically means that you want to address what happens if you don't solve it. And finally, I like to see a description of where the problem is. It is good to understand how broadly this issue is affecting the company. Just as important as what you put into the problem statement is what you leave off of it. Absolutely do not include solutions in your problem statement. The problem-solving process is designed to take you to a solution. If you start with a solution in mind, you are short-circuiting those steps and reducing their effectiveness. You also don't want to assign causes for much the same reason. If you haven't done your homework, there's a chance that you don't truly understand the root cause of the problem. If your problem statement steers the solution in a particular direction, you might not get the best results from your efforts. Opinions also have no place in a problem statement. Speak in terms of facts. I'll admit, speculating about the potential impact of a problem does butt up against opinion, but it should be grounded in established goals that are set by things like policy deployment. Avoid broad statements and generalizations in your problem statement. And very importantly, don't assign blame. The first reason is that very often the person associated with the problem is working off of a broken process. Blame implies fault, and if you give somebody a broken tool, it isn't really fair to blame them when they don't get good results. The second reason is that even if there really is a person at fault, this is not the way to address the issue. If there is a personnel problem, you probably don't need to be doing a continuous improvement project anyway. Just handle it with good leadership and correct the person's behavior. Get more out of our Lean Training System videos with our Continuous Improvement Companion. It's closing in on 1,000 pages of great content. It is currently available as a download with a subscription to Vlaction Videos and as a license through our store. You can also get a free version of it by signing up for our newsletter. Click the links in the description below or click on the cards that pop up on this video to learn more. We'll also add links at the end. Let's look at a few examples of problem statements. Take a second and try to spot the error in this problem statement. The first issue is that the problem statement assigns a cause for the reduction in sales. There are also no dates in this problem statement. How about this problem statement? This one attributes blame. There are also no numbers. And this last one. This one incorporates a solution. In a live class, we would create a problem statement from some basic information I will provide you. I would still like you to pause the video and attempt to create a problem statement on your own. With this information, you should be able to create a problem statement regarding my tardiness. Pause the video now and write a problem statement. Here is one possible problem statement from the information provided. Note that it has numbers, both in the form of historical data and a specific goal. It has an impact, and it has a date. It also specifies where the problem is located. Now, regarding problem statements, there's no absolute right answer. You may come up with something slightly different. For example, you may actually define what tardiness is in your problem statement. Perhaps you specify that it means being at your desk ready to work at 8 o'clock. That said, even with many options for a right answer, there are wrong problem statements. Make sure you review them for the things that should be included and the things that should be omitted. I've mentioned the charter a few times. Let's take a look at it in detail now. Basically, it is a planning and communication tool. Use it. Having this document greatly increases your chance of success. It keeps you focused and creates buy-in on the project. One word of warning. Don't think of this document as being set in stone. Make changes as needed, but make sure that you communicate those changes to prevent confusion. This is the Kaizen charter form that Vlaction uses. Since you already spent a lot of time on problem statements, I want you to note the large piece of real estate that is devoted to the topic. That should be an indication of how important it is to get it right. The top of the form provides a place for scoping the project. It includes a process name. The start and end points define what can be changed during the Kaizen. This is referring to the start and end points of the part of the process that you're working on. We also ask the question of whether a value stream map exists and who the owner is. We hope that if the answer is no, you put a lot of deep thought into whether you should be diving into a Kaizen at this point. With no value stream map, there is likely no clear future state vision for how the work area fits into the future state of the value stream. The next section identifies the leadership team for the project. There are places for the champion, team leader, and facilitator. Again, if any of these are left blank, you should question why. It also lets you know who the charter author is, when it was first created, and the date of the current revision. The problem statement is part of the strategy section. In addition to the problem statement, I like to see some verification that the Kaizen event is linked somehow to corporate strategy. The overview section contains a Kaizen summary as well as a list of key deliverables. This is slightly different than goals. These are specific, tangible things that need to be in place when the event is wrapped up. The specific goals go in the metrics section. The bottom of the page contains a list of resources, including team members. We will go into more detail on each of these sections in the next few slides. This video comes from Velaction's Lean Training System, which takes a module-based approach to learning about continuous improvement. Modules include a PowerPoint presentation and student guides for every video, plus there are many exercises and quizzes as well. There's also a whole host of supporting content in the form of terms in our Continuous Improvement Companion and downloadable articles. Our modules are currently available in our store and as downloads at Velaction Videos. Click the links in the description below or click on the cards that pop up on this video to learn more. We'll also add links at the end. Properly scoping a project plays a large role in determining its success. Too broad, and you end up with a lot of half-done tasks. Too narrow, and you get everything you wanted done, but the impact is minimal. On this form, start by giving the Kaizen a common name that you can use for easy reference. At a larger-sized company, there may be a half-dozen Kaizen events in various stages of planning at any given time. An easy-to-remember name helps prevent confusion. The Kaizen charter form asks whether a value stream map exists. If it does not, you should think long and hard about whether you are really ready for a Kaizen event in that work area. I'm not saying you should never do a Kaizen without a value stream map, but I do highly recommend that you have one. It keeps all of your improvement activity aligned. I also want you to specifically limit what can be touched in your Kaizen activity. It is easy to get scope creep. You get to the edge of what you want to work on and see something else that might be a low-hanging fruit. The problem is that your planning did not cover those additional things. Be wary about adding to a project. Sometimes an opportunity is too good to pass up. In those cases, I recommend tackling it in a separate project so you don't fall short somewhere else. If you simply can't resist broadening the scope, make sure that a champion is on board. It is a good idea to get a second opinion when expanding the scope. On the screen, you can see a basic definition of scoping. The purpose of scoping is to match the time and resources available to the goals. Done well, the team accomplishes everything they set out to do without wasting time. Be clear about the process steps that are in play. Be specific. It will prevent conflict during your Kaizen activity and will simplify your planning process. I would like to mention, though, that as your organization becomes more adept at Kaizen events, teams will be able to tackle broader projects. Be careful, though. Poor scoping is a very common and costly mistake. It is more prevalent when you have a rookie leadership team. Again, a strong facilitator can help guide you to scope properly. Let's talk about the leadership team for a Kaizen event. The champion is one of the central figures in the Kaizen planning process. They are typically around the director level. They control many other resources of the Kaizen event. They are also the ones that will be kicking down obstacles that are beyond the ability of the team leader to overcome. There is some communication between the champion and the executive sponsor. Much of this communication is done before the event planning is even started. They discuss priorities and go over KPIs and policy deployment numbers and major customer issues and other 30,000-foot items. The champion should be acting on that information continuously, not just in the Kaizen event. The event just fits into the ongoing conversation. Once the event is selected, there will be some negotiation on goals and resources, and probably some mentoring, but there's not typically a lot of back and forth at this level once the Kaizen event planning gets going in earnest. Generally speaking, champions are high enough in the organization that they are trusted to make decisions independently. The interaction between the champion and the team leader would probably be defined as directive mentoring. As a team leader becomes more experienced, though, the directive part tends to taper off. One way this shows is that, as a rule, champions tend to push novice team leaders towards more aggressive goals than most team leaders would select on their own. As team leaders get a few events under their belts, they tend to know the expectations better and set more aggressive goals on their own. This communication between these two will cover a lot of negotiating for resources, including team members and potentially budget, depending on the anticipated changes. The champion also works fairly regularly with the facilitator. This tends to be a bit of a back channel focused on personnel issues. The champion may give the facilitator special instructions on what the team leader needs to work on, or specific recommendations on working with particular team members. There's also a bit of an evaluation that goes on. The facilitator is partnering with the champion on developing the team leader. That will require some honest feedback on how the team leader is performing. I like to point out that the team leader and the facilitator are stacked like this because they tend to work closely during much of the planning and certainly during execution. Thanks for watching this extended free version of our Lean Training System module video. If you want to watch the whole video, check it out at Valaction Videos. If you want to make sure you don't miss the next LTS video that we post, please be sure to subscribe down below. We also always appreciate likes as it helps us get viewed more and makes us keep adding additional content. Thanks for watching, and best wishes on your continuous improvement journey.